Chapter 1881. Negotiation. The three mothers stared at Kara, and then back at their resident dorms for students of the Darklight Host. Their girls were finished basic education, but they were not exceptional students, and none of the elders had taken them in as disciples. They also didn't have a solid group to complete missions with. They constantly had to advertise for a tank, and their other damage dealer had been taken in by an elder, leaving them basically alone. So it was actually a good deal for them to work under the Darklight Host to get resources, even if they were going to have to spend some time or get lucky with resources to pay it back. I have some serious concerns about the level of debt that you have tricked my daughter into taking on. With living expenses, it's not possible to pay that loan back. No clan would give out an artifact-grade skill book on credit, Amy's mother began, her face serious. Kara smiled and brought out a tea set. It's not that serious, I assure you. We offer no-interest finance, as I mentioned, and the book was traded at a substantial 20% discount. I assure you that she will be able to repay it in a timely manner. However, I can add a performance clause to the sale. If Miss Amy is willing to join the Darklight Host, the price of the Warbeast skill will be forgiven if she can reach Void Immortal within the next 3 years, or if she gains a class at or above the Epic grade. If she gains an Epic grade class? Isn't that nearly impossible? Kara shook her head. Now that she has such a lovely new skill, there is a chance that with a bit more training and 1 or 2 more skills, she could do it this month. Assuming that she has filled her skill tree, that is. Amy shook her head. I haven't gotten enough points to fill my skill tree. Kara wrapped a friendly arm around her. You know, as a member of the Darklight Host, we have specialized training facilities to help with that, as well as group outings to dungeons and hidden areas. So, you intend to poach them from the new home? Amy's mother asked. Not at all. Members of the Darklight Host are almost all still members of the New Home Merchant Clan. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Think of it as studying under an elder with their own faction. Do you even have an elder? Kara laughed at the woman's disdain. Of course we do. We took in the Blackwoods pack. Not only do we have elders, we have a supreme-ranked pack leader in the guild. I think he's actually at clan leader Nerissa's pavilion at the moment. Their relationship is quite cordial. The ladies laughed quietly. Everyone in the clan knew that the two of them were cordial with each other. They had been seen around the clan together constantly since the recruitment event started. But nobody wanted to say it out loud and jinx it, since the clan leader seemed to be in a much better than usual mood. Well, you have a point about that. The Darklight Host is not short on power as a faction. I don't see a good reason why Amy shouldn't be allowed to study under you. However, I do have concerns about her being permanently indebted. I would like to pay down some of the price of the book. Carl nodded and slid a piece of paper across the coffee table between them. The woman blinked as she read the number on it. Right, artifact grade skill book. All right, I will trade you our family heirloom for the skill book. Carl gave her a highly doubtful look. The average member of the clan did not have an heirloom that was even close to the price of the book, and he was already planning to force the girls to the level where he could claim they fulfilled the requirements after a few years of work. Unless Kara was just collecting them to go with Tessa and the others, in which case, they would get there on their own. The woman took out a tablet and placed it between them. Carl examined it with the skilled eye of a rune master. It was a peak immortal defensive array designed to protect a large space, like a family compound or guild house, from attack. It had a mana gathering array within it, and the actual layout was brilliant. Much more efficient than what Carl had been doing. That item was worth much more to him than the face value that the system assigned it, and the system assigned it a lot of value. At the clan hall, this will trade for half what the skill book does. Will you give me the same terms? Carl nodded. As it's a runic item, and especially useful to me, I will actually give you a premium. 60% of the book value, so Amy only owes 20% after the discount on the price. Amy cheered as she transformed back.
Sweet.
How much do I still owe? I might be able to pay it. Her mother rolled her eyes. You still owe 20,000 clan credits. That's going to take some time. Carl patted her on the shoulder. It's not a big deal. We will get you all set up. How do you feel about learning a trade skill? That will help you get clan credits faster, as the crafters get a profit share of the items that they make. Ooh, that sounds good. And then I can make extra money between shifts and missions. Girls, we've made it rich. Her friends giggled. Amy might be enthusiastic, but she had absolutely zero sense of finance or self-preservation. Anyone else would be trembling at the time it would take to get 20,000 clan credits. Even earning one a day doing difficult missions was not easy for a spirit immortal. Chapter 1882. Elemental Mages. What sort of trade skills do you offer? I know that your guild is a crafting guild and not a trade faction. I've been watching the items come up on the clan listings lately, but I can't tell what you're using to make them. Well, we have blacksmiths, tailors, inscriptionists, rune crafters, sculptors, and others. As a druid, Miss Amy can make wooden items easily, so she can do well in more than one of the groups. But if she has a passion for fashion, we can arrange for her to work with Lady Ray at the clothing shop that the guild runs. Amy shook her head. The spider lady was scary. Even if she was fashion-inclined, that was not the sort of spot that she wanted to work. Shop? Sure. But not work. What about carving? I like to make pretty things out of wood. Kara smiled. Oh, you'll get along well with our Lycans. They like to make things of wood and bone as well, and they've got lots of druids. Now, if you'd like to have your mother review the work contract, we can get started. Why have my mom review it? So that she doesn't tear it out of your hands. I can see her already getting anxious. Carl laughed at the pair as he handed the three mothers, plus all three girls, a standard copy of the employment contract, plus a loan agreement, in case they wanted skills like Amy had received. The parents looked it over and reluctantly agreed that it was a good deal for the kids. They had come in to trade a resource they had found on a mission for equipment, and somehow they had been recruited into the Darklight host. The concept didn't quite compute to the mothers, but they suspected that it had much more to do with the fact that they had attracted the attention of the Chaos Badger than anything that was actually in the skills or potential of the girls themselves. None of them were anything special. Basic classes, mediocre grades, no particular accomplishments. The fact that they were only finally getting their first rare grade items after graduation was not because their families were poor, they simply hadn't shown any signs of potential or ambition that would need it, so their families hadn't wanted to spend the money unnecessarily. And that was a form of motivation on their own. Wanting more stuff so you could do bigger things and accomplish more, but not having any accomplishments to justify your family spending on you was a tough spot. So, they were looking at Kara like a gift sent to help them out. All right, we can agree to these terms. Girls, ask the nice guild leader for something that will help you advance your skills. If you can get an epic grade class upgrade after you fill your skill tree, you can pay it off early without all the extra work, one of the mage's mothers explained. Well, we both wanted elementals. So, if you know an elemental golem type ability, we'll take that on credit and join Amy at the shop until we've paid it off. Of course. Just give me a moment, and I will arrange the perfect elemental summoning spell for the pair of you. The element will likely depend on your specialties and affinity, but the basics will be solid. The parents waited patiently as they assumed Carl was searching the guild's storage for the books. But the Seeker of the Blue Dragon came to sit next to him, knowing that the avatar of the World Dragon was going to do something crazy. She didn't have to be a mind reader to know that. But she could read minds if she wanted to. That was one of the core skills of the Blue Clergy, so that they could obtain the absolute truth and all the details that someone had forgotten to include, including the ones that they had barely noticed themselves. Carl decided not to go overboard on the spells for the other two, or the parents would likely think that he had nefarious intentions. Something like trying to keep the kids in debt to the guild forever. Elemental Wrath and Greater Golem combined to create the Greater Elemental spell. That was simple, safe, and effective. Alright, I will use a skill to transfer the spell directly, because writing a copy is a pain. Come over here, and I will transfer Greater Elemental to you. Pet Sitter Carl Grant's knowledge, skill, Greater Elemental, will be transferred to the Nap Enthusiast Samba. Pet Sitter Carl Grant's knowledge, skill, Greater Elemental, will be transferred to the Gullible Hatchling Kalima. Greater Elemental Rare Grade Skill. Summons one Greater Elemental, a golem type construct aligned to the caster's elemental affinity. Hey, I'm pretty sure that your spell just insulted me. Kalima complained. It does that. The spell gives you a nickname that the system remembers you by. You can change it with work, but some of them are permanent. For example, I know a blue dragon who is thousands of years old and still gets called a curious hatchling. Veda chuckled, as she knew that the description was likely perfectly accurate, given the personality of many of the blue dragons. They were perpetually enthralled with knowledge in all its forms, and got hyperfixated on learning new things, so the fact that one of the gods might see them as a curious hatchling sounded more accurate than any other nickname they might have received. Go ahead and call your elementals. Let's see what you're working with. They're based on your skills and strongest elemental affinity. Samba and Kalima summoned their elementals, giving Samba a pair of earth elementals, while Kalima conjured 4 smaller fire elementals. Why are mine small? Kalima asked, staring at the greater fire elementals. I guess that's just how your brain and magic decided they were best. But you've got 4, and the smaller fire elementals are still greater elementals, so they're no weaker. They're just smaller. You have a great affinity for golems if you've gotten 4 at the start. That's a rare thing without a skill. Once we get you settled, I will find you another few skill books that will help you with your combat powers. Horde mode golem mages were extremely powerful, even if they might struggle against a golem mistress like Dana, whose golems would hack theirs apart in an instant. Chapter 1883. Why Kara does what Kara does. While the parents and their new mages celebrated the gain of their new skills, Carl took a moment to interrogate Kara. Is there a particular reason that you decided that we needed a druid and some new mages? Of course there is. I don't do things for no reason. Care to elaborate? I'm building our spirit immortal team. First, we have Ophelia and Lotus for tanks and heals, then we've got Amy for off-tank and backup heals, more golems, Tessa for buffs, Seraphina, and the boys for muscle. Trust me, give it like 1 year, 2 at the most, and it will all work out. Carl had very little faith that Kara was not trying to pull some epic prank with a half-year or longer lead time, but her reasoning was solid. The ladies were about to reach the power level where they could go out and play in the immortal world. But he was too strong to be interested in many of the same instances, unless it was one of the hidden realms that had something for everyone. So, it made sense to have a full team for them to go with once they had their immortal spirits ready. The Behemoths and Seraphina would both grow very rapidly in the tiny world, so they would soon be joining the team, just like Leo had joined Carl not long after hatching. The beasts grew up fast, especially the Behemoths. So, they would soon have a very well-rounded spirit immortal team to go with the strong Void Realm team of Carl and Dana plus the beasts. Though, if it was a year or 2 from now, would everyone still be at the same rank? Kara seemed fairly confident that none of the others would progress beyond spirit immortal in that time. The Badger knew many things, so Carl didn't ask the deep questions. She likely wouldn't answer anyhow. Unlike Thor and Hawk, Kara was actually good at hiding her thoughts from him. Hey, why don't you make me a new skill too? Spatial Quake and Soul Siphon. Carl asked. That's the one. Carl let everyone celebrate as he tried out making a new skill for Kara just to see how wonderfully, horrifically wrong it could go. Demonic Cultivation Manual created Unholy God's Path of Eternal Destruction. Unusable with current system affinity. Carl frowned. I think I did it wrong. But when he tried the combination with a few alterations, it still came up with the same result. Kara also frowned at the notification. No, I'm looking at the details and you did it right, but what it makes isn't something that we can do. And I think that the system believes it's evil. It literally shreds souls through all of space and time, so they can never resurrect, and feeds that power to the caster. If there ever was a technique that could properly be called an evil growth technique, that's probably it. In order to go from base spirit immortal to supreme with that, you'd have to kill millions of people. Apparently, you can't just be a part-time eliminator of stupidity from the flow of time. It's an all-or-nothing thing. Kara agreed. Ray laughed at Kara's annoyance, which had nothing to do with anything as righteous as eliminating stupidity. She wanted the skill simply because blowing up a soul in the chaos plane was even better than a fireworks show, and if you could absorb all that energy after, it wasn't even a waste. All right, we will leave the girls in your care. Is this lady also part of your guild? Amy's mother asked. Carl shook his head. No, Kara and Opal are, but this is Veda, Seeker of the Blue Dragon, and a guest of the new home merchant clan. She's staying at the Darklight Host Guild house during the recruitment event. The clan was a bit short on spaces suitable to clergy, so we're playing the gracious host. And they were the reason she was here. If we can't do that, at least make something fun. Carl chuckled and created a coin for Kara to give out to someone. Coin of random chance randomly increases or decreases luck for 1 hour. Kara laughed as she made dozens more. These were going to be even more fun than cupcakes to give out. She could hand them to people openly as gifts, and then they could determine whether she was blessing or cursing them. That was the perfect gift, even better than the poverty cupcakes, which were very clearly a consolation prize for those without anything worth taking. Kara vanished, off to find her favorite target for random gifts. Veda frowned. You gave her something strange, didn't you? I gave her a coin that randomly increases or decreases luck when activated. The Seeker laughed. That sounds like the sort of thing that a badger could keep herself entertained with for hours on end. But somehow, I suspect that she's going to give it away. Carl nodded. She's already making more to give to people and wondering why she wasn't making them herself before now. The excitement had died down, and the mothers were preparing to pack up, which meant that Carl had to get himself back to work. Or not. Instead, he called for the pet sitter that lurked around the Immortal Realm Guild house. If you could take these fine ladies and get rooms set up for them on the second floor, we will talk later about trade skills, work schedules, and such. They can have the rest of the day off to settle in and personalize their rooms for the nights that they're staying here. They may wish to remain at home with their parents more often, but our standard work contract guarantees them a room here, so I will have you set it up now. Carl explained for the benefit of the girls. The pet sitter knew his intentions just from his thoughts. Thank you so much. We've been trying to get our parents to let us move into individual apartments for ages since we graduated from school, but they're protective. Carl laughed. That's how mothers are supposed to be. It's best to appreciate it. It means they care. Chapter 1884. Ways to Learn. The trio was led away by the odd-looking creature, and Veda took the opportunity to start grilling Carl with questions about his ability to create skills. When did you gain that ability to make new skill books? How many can you do? Can you do skills that you read in other books, like an inscriptionist? I actually got the skill book skill early on, which can make copies of skills that I know, Carl began, and Veda nodded, already familiar with the skills limitations. And then when I became a runecrafter, I had more options on how to create skill books. But they're still primarily limited to skills that I already know, or variations of skills that I already know. Even if I know all the runes in the language, writing up a skill book for a skill that I can't use isn't in my abilities. It just won't work. I understand the issue. Yes, without the inscription skill, you end up just creating books, not skill books. That was a common issue when we tried to recruit dragons from certain other worlds. Oh, that's an interesting tidbit. How do dragons from worlds without a system learn skills? Either by study, the slow way, or by direct mental transmission. Similar to the way that you communicate with your beasts, their parents will reinforce the details of a skill into their brains until it sticks. Carl winked at the Seeker. I have it on good authority that such a process might only work on dragons. What I said was that it likely doesn't work on Hawk. I know that it works for me. Remy corrected in his mind. Sisters are bullies. Especially water sisters. Hawk countered. Can you use all the skills that your beasts know? And can they use all the ones that you know? Carl shook his head. No, the skill I have only works one way. I can use all their skills, but they can only use the ones I know if they're compatible with them. Beasts are particular about skills, and the one that allows broad compatibility isn't one that any of them can use. The only one that can use nearly all my skills is Kara, and that's mostly because she's Chaos Element aligned. Oh, that's an interesting take on it. I should do more study on it. I have heard that the Chaos Element is very versatile when it comes to skills that aren't purely elemental. But I have never seen a properly done study of the subject, mostly because Chaos Element targets are challenging to get to cooperate with the study. Carl laughed at the thought. Getting Kara to sit still for a blue dragon study especially the whole study and not just a day or two, would be nearly impossible. And Kara was generally considered easy to entertain. Veda was about to ask another question when a bunny suddenly appeared in the room, which she was 100% sure was locked. The blue dragons might not have the infallible memory of the bronze dragons, but she could sense the spell still active and keeping the private room sealed. Guild leader, we have a minor issue in the city. There are people. Carl chuckled as the bunny struggled to explain the issue properly. People in a city is normally a good thing. What sort of people do we have that are a problem? Are they trying to attack? Or perhaps steal my bunnies? There are many dumb people in the world who might try both. The bunny laughed. Neither of those, but I think that you need to see this immediately. Carl shrugged and helped Veda to her feet. It was new knowledge, even if it was just a random, strange gathering of immortals in the middle of the city. And any new knowledge was good knowledge to the Blue Dragon. They both headed out into the city and immediately saw what was wrong with the situation. They were not just looking at people. They were looking at a hidden realm overlapping with reality. Anyone who tried to move around the city risked getting pulled through and trapped on the other side of the secret realm, but the place was already populated with a clan of immortals who could see the Darklight host and their visitors as clearly as Carl could see them. Only, they had no ability to cross over from where they were, and Carl couldn't hear the words that they were saying to each other. Have we had anyone pass through yet? Even if it was accidental, we should still be able to send them a guild message and find out what the locals on the other side are like. If it's set up like a dungeon, they are likely to go rabid the moment that someone enters. But if it's just a pocket dimension that accidentally hit the immortal realm, it may just need repair and relocation. Though they should be able to do that themselves. Immortals do make most of those small realms. As if sensing the commotion, Kara reappeared next to Carl, using her space as a recall point to be where she wanted to be. Though they were hundreds of kilometers apart, they were both close to the portal, and that was enough to count as within range to save herself some time finding fun things. Besides, she had given the moron a lucky coin and a lucky cupcake today. He was going to be over the moon. The badger stared at the humans, who stared back at her. Then, she transformed into her natural state, and the humans began to point and cheer. Carl wasn't sure if that was a good sign. So, are we going to go visit the new people, or am I going to visit the new people? Kara asked. Veda, would you like to come with us? For the purposes of scientific research and information gathering, of course. The Seeker of the Blue Dragon smiled. Of course. Though, I suspect that we should likely wait until there is an elder present who understands the situation. And perhaps your wife. Chapter 1885. Step inside. Hey Dana, there is an odd thing happening at the house. I think that a hidden pocket dimension has collided with reality in the middle of town, and the entrance to the secret realm is overlapping the market area. Are you telling me this because you thought I should know not to come back, or because you're already there and someone reminded you to tell your wife you're going? I haven't left yet. Veda reminded me to warn everyone. Dana laughed, as she already knew that Carl would not have messaged her before he had entered and found something fun if nobody had reminded him. Like the beasts, he was very find out if it's fun first, then tell everyone in his thinking. Even now, Ray was waiting eagerly in her space for the right moment to jump out and ambush something. She was not happy that the new spell to make an army of spiders was a Carl exclusive, but they could negotiate that later. She was not giving up on having a whole army of spiders to go places with her. All right, I've informed the others, and we can enter when we're ready. Most of the team will be staying in the tiny world for now, and I've put a barrier over the portal with the warning that the area is currently unstable. That will pull some people here to investigate, but it will keep those who might want to bring their kids shopping at home where it's safe. Got it, let's go. Are you brining a healer? Carl nodded. If we need one, I have a spell for that. But I can grab Tion if you want. The Seeker laughed, and her eyes flashed the blue of her goddess. No, I don't see anything positive coming from a tiny fox coming with us. Either he will be in danger or someone will envy him, and we will be in danger. He's just too cute for combat. Carl laughed, knowing that Tion was actually capable enough when he needed to be. He just loved to be cute and had a strange aversion to getting dirty for a creature that was earth and holy element. Hawk, Ray, and Kara were already in their spaces for Carl and Veda to go through, just in case they got separated going through individually. That happened a lot in the secret realms. Groups would enter together, but they would be deposited at random all over the area by the pocket dimension. So, they would have to work solo, or hunt for their own group. Most would carry a beacon of some sort, which Carl and Veda hadn't thought of. But the two of them were an avatar and a seeker. They were much better attuned to the universe than most, and they could likely sense each other anyhow. Especially Veda, as the job of a seeker of the god of knowledge, would surely have techniques to find what she wanted. I know it's cliché, but hold my hand, and we're less likely to get separated, Veda informed Carl. Carl grabbed her hand, and Kara laughed at the expression on Veda's face as Carl swung their arms as he stepped forward and shifted them both into the other realm, using Planeswalker to move between adjacent realms. How did you do that? What the hell? Carl laughed. Planeswalker. I'm an avatar of the world dragon, remember? Now, should we go say hello to those people staring at us? And they really were staring.
Ah.
Red-ons are Zindeminen.
Ah.
Someone save us, there are demons. Carl laughed as the system delayed its translation for a split second, and then gave the locals a short bow. Hello, friends of the elves. Do not panic, we are not here to harm anyone. I know that I look a bit odd, but I assure you I was born human. The group froze as the system automatically translated his words into their dialect. You are human? You don't seem human at all. And that is definitely a monster with you. Carl turned to Veda and frowned. She definitely looked more human than she did, despite the fact that she was a dragon. What was it that the locals were seeing? Someone get the elders. They will know what to do. A child ran off, and Carl waited patiently for them to return with the elders of this village. It wasn't a dungeon-type instance, people weren't attacking them, so they should be able to figure out how to solve the issue of the colliding realms in a peaceful manner. And hopefully, they would be able to do it quickly, or the other clans would start to arrive to loot this place. If that happened, all bets about a peaceful reception were off. The boy returned a moment later with a group of ancient elves, their faces lined and weathered with the years that they had seen. Even if they weren't immortals, it took 1,000 years for an elf to look like that. So, either it was a show they put on or these elves were absolutely ancient and tested the limits of what could be called immortal. The tallest of them, an elven man with a long white beard, stepped forward and stared directly into Carl's eyes. Then he spoke in the common tongue with a slight foreign inflection that didn't sound like elven. I see that we have an interesting guest. How did you get here, war tyrant of the world dragon's assimilation cult? Carl frowned. Well, that's a bit of a rude way to put it. We're not an assimilation cult, but your realm collided with mine directly into my guild house, in fact. So, I thought that I would come through the overlap and see what your intentions were before the local humans started to arrive. You know what they're like. The ancient elf laughed. Carl had claimed when he arrived that he was human, but 30 seconds into talking to him, it was clear that while he might pretend to be human, he didn't consider himself part of the faction that was human in his world. Possibly because he was a world dragon avatar, possibly because he was very clearly not human, no matter what he told people. Chapter 1886. Truth Revealed. Indeed, I do know what the humans are like, war tyrant, the ancient elf agreed. You may simply call me Carl, or Avatar if you prefer. The other title sounds like you expect me to attack at any moment. The elf stared meaningfully at him for half a second, and Veda began to laugh. He's got you there, Carl. Hey, whose team are you on here? The dragon gave him the same look as the elf did, and in Carl's mind, Kara began to laugh. The dragon was only here for the knowledge to be gained. She wasn't actually his ally, and had no intentions of picking a fight with anyone. If things got too messy, she would simply transform and fly away to watch from a distance or find other interesting things. The elder turned to the locals. These are not demons. The one with the blue eyes is a dragon, and the other is something else entirely. But neither is a demon. You were right to call us. These creatures are much more dangerous than foreign humans, or if they had been actual demons. Man, they're just dragging you today, Veda laughed. Right? You'd think that the world dragon did something personal to them. One of the other elders gave him a look that was clearly intended to shut him up. Veda's eyes flashed blue with curiosity. The mention of the world dragon had set them off. They definitely held a grudge. But the elves and the world dragon weren't natural enemies. He was a nature-adjacent deity, and he was even on good terms with the spider goddess of the dark elves. Please accompany us back to the temple, and we will explain everything, one of the female elders insisted. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her face lightly wrinkled, which was still a lot of aging for an elf. Carl followed them across the small village, which turned out to be much more advanced than he had expected. They had all the modern amenities, including runic discs that they used as a form of transport through the forest. But the outside of the building were designed to elven preferences, being all natural and blending into the forest. This barrier is curious. Can we stop to examine it? Veda asked as they approached a white marble temple. You may examine it from the inside once you have passed through. It is a barrier of truth. No transformation, illusion, deception, or lie may exist inside its confines. It was created by the last demigod of our people before she was slain. Veda nodded and stepped through, only to find herself in dragon form. Ooh, this is fun. I can't shift back and I can't even shrink myself. I like it, very honest. I wonder if I can use it to fact-check books. And with that, Carl considered the dragon officially lost. She might be present in body, but her mind was already deciding which of the tomes in her inventory to check first, to see if they were destroyed, which would be a tragedy, or if they would simply highlight the false and misleading passages. Carl followed them through, and the barrier glowed bright gold for a few seconds, while the world seemed to spin around Carl. That caught everyone's attention, as his form was rapidly shifting between a dozen different forms, before it finally settled on one. Carl looked down at himself, and found that the form it had picked was not one that he had ever used before. In fact, he didn't even have a transformation to attain this form. That's curious. I have never seen this form before. If this is the true form of me, should I not be more familiar with it? Instantly, he realized that he was not speaking out loud. He was simply projecting his thoughts into the minds of everyone around him, including the plants, which responded with a shake of their branches. Then, he caught a look at his own face in the fountain. He looked just like one of the pet sitters, but he had a miasma of black and gold aura around him, and black dragon wings on his back that didn't seem to be a proper color. Carl thought about that for a moment, and realized what had happened. He had multiple bloodlines and constitutions. The spell couldn't make sense of them all, so it had blended them into something that represented what he truly was. And that was somewhere between a chaos dragon and whatever the pet sitters were. He was also tall. The elves barely made it to his waist, and even the full form of Veda wasn't particularly impressive standing next to him. I knew it. War Tyrant of the Darklight Host is what you truly are. No matter your intentions, you will always be what you were born to be, the elven elders decided. Carl shrugged and noticed that his hands had long black claws, much like Matilda's. They were both there, and not there at the same time, permanently linked to the Chaos Plane. But more importantly, this form was beginning to feel right in a way that his human form no longer did. His cat demon form felt like him, because he used it so long, but ever since he became an immortal, his human form had felt more like a costume that he put on for others. Now, he was beginning to realize why. It wasn't his natural form anymore, he was simply used to it, and was using it to hide the changes that had been made to his constitution by the effects of the skills and upgrades his body had undergone. I like it. It's very you, but with face tentacles. Opal says that Dana is going to love those. Carl sighed. Opal, behave for a minute. Don't you start writing weird fanfictions before I get home. Kara laughed and appeared next to them in her badger form. And a chaos badger? Seriously? Fine. Since you're here, please accept our hospitality, spawn of the Chaos Plane. Kara smiled at the elder, and then took out a whole platter of cupcakes. For you. I thank you for your hospitality. Chapter 1887. Visited by the Outreach Program. The elder elf looked at the cupcakes that Kara had offered him and then tentatively took one. That is surprisingly good. I know, right? I don't make the cupcakes myself. I simply hand them out. Kara agreed. That news made the rest of the elves relax a little, as they were now certain that the cupcakes weren't some sort of Chaos Realm magical item that would inflict untold horrors on their internal organs. The cupcakes were passed around a room, and the elves smiled as they realized that they were made by a nature priestess of some sort. The flavor of the magic was distinctive. Now, you were saying that our home collided with a world in the immortal realm? Carl nodded. Indeed. You have collided with a world, and directly on top of a Darklight Host Guild house. It appears that you have had some negative interactions with the guild in the past, going by the nicknames that you have for me. The ancient elves nodded. You could say that. We came from a mortal world that was visited by what they called their outreach program, but it was nothing more than a cult of the world dragon, which took over the entire planet in the course of only a decade. We decided to flee from the world using the assistance of an immortal ally after the resistance battle was lost. However, it appears that our luck is not eternal, and we have run into the assimilation force again. Carl laughed and shook his head. My branch is not part of an outreach program. In fact, we are allies of the local clans. It is a good balance. We also don't intend to drive you from this space, but how much do you know of the immortal realms? The elf sighed, not truly believing Carl's words, despite the truth barrier. We know that they are going to treat our home like a natural resource and send teams to plunder it. Carl nodded. And that's why I came first. If your group had been driven insane by the magic that forms the dungeons, things would have been simple. But they're just random people who speak an odd dialect of Elven that even a system takes a bit of time to translate. So, we have ourselves a conundrum. I see that you would very much like to keep your home intact, and that means we need to separate the realm from my reality. Do you have the magic to do that? Because it's not a skill that I have studied. I may be able to do it for you, but as this is not my space, and I am a mere immortal who cannot move the world I live on, it might not be within my power. The ancient elf gestured to another room. There are control runes to move the world. However, none of us can see out. The barrier around this world is too secure. So, we have no idea what direction to push it that won't either embed us more firmly with your world, or throw us directly into another. Kara raised her hand. I can help with that. That was more concerning than Carl's insistence that he was not here to assimilate them into the Darklight Host. How would you intend to help us? There is a safety feature in the Chaos Plane for general use. If I move your entire pocket dimension to the Chaos Plane, using the runes in the other room, I can pop you back out somewhere completely random, but guaranteed to be safe. For how long? That's random too. But you could poke your head out and guide yourselves somewhere uninhabited, Carl offered. That sounded like a viable plan, but they were still highly reluctant to trust a Chaos Badger to do them any sort of favor. The species did not have the best reputation, and they might just find themselves floating right in front of a cluster of worlds occupied by the Darklight Host, as the presence of the World Dragon's avatar twisted luck to favor himself subconsciously. We need time to discuss this. Perhaps you would enjoy a refreshment, one of the ladies asked. Oh, that would be wonderful. Carl agreed, and then his form shifted to the cat demon that he was most used to. Though even normal. Damn it, why can't an avatar of the World Dragon just for once do what everyone expects? Stay in one true form, you can't just change at will. Carl laughed at the elf's frustration and examined his furry paws. Yes, this is much better. The head shape of the other form was no good for drinking tea. Though, now that I know it's an option, I'm definitely going to find a way to bring it out again in combat. Do you not understand the words true form? Truth is what I say it is. I like this form, so it is me, as much as whatever genetics say I should be, or what your spell thinks I should look like. Kara gave him a double thumbs up. That will be spectacular. That form will scare any clan solid the first time that they see it. Maybe you can save it for the next guild war, so you can break it out with the war banner and let them know that they really messed up. The elves stared at the pair. You're a bonded group, aren't you? The avatar was a beast tamer of some sort before he was avatar. Carl nodded. A beast masterclass, among others. Though I don't see system tags for any of you, so I suspect that you might not be familiar with the concept. Oh, we know it. Don't forget that the armies of the Darklight host took our entire world. Right, forgot about that for a moment. Do you have time to explain that to me while we drink? Even a storyteller that isn't on the council would be fine. I'm sure that Veda would love to learn some of the lore of your world. The elf snorted in amusement. Veda was a blue dragon. Of course, she would love to learn the lore of a new world that she had never been to before. All right, we will send you a storyteller, once we consult the oracle to see what one you're least likely to keep. Chapter 1888. The Might of the Host. Veda frowned. You have an oracle, and you still manage to run into a planet? The elves looked a bit sheepish. The oracle is unwell, and spends most of her time in the long slumber of the elves. She hasn't awakened in most of a century. Can I go wake her up? Kara asked. Please don't. One of the elves that came in with serving trays placed a hand on Kara's shoulders, subtly keeping the badger in place before she could vanish. You know that doesn't actually stop me, right? Kara asked, enjoying the fact that nobody could lie to her. Of course it does. I have nature bonding, so you can't run from my grip. The badger laughed as they both vanished, then reappeared in the same spot. Damn it. Carl nodded in agreement. That's the usual response when someone tries to catch a badger. How did you even manage to domesticate one enough to convince her to bond with you as a beast master? If not friend, why friend-shaped? Does it work on them, because they'll happily let you pet them as they rob you, then leave? Veda laughed at the mock-innocent expression on Kara's face. The badger couldn't deny it because the truth magic was too strong for her to make an excuse here. But silence wasn't going to be taken as a denial either. Well, I think that we found our storyteller. Please, elders, do keep in mind that there is a limited amount of time before others start to arrive, and they will inevitably begin to loot your space. The elders frowned, then nodded. Fine, you can discuss things with that servant girl. She knows the basics of the story. Kara began unloading the snacks and tea onto the table, then cheered when she found a jug of elven wine hidden underneath. All right, now we're ready to start with story time. Tell us the story, either as you heard it or in a more dramatic version. Both are fine. Kara forced the girl into a chair and poured her a cup of tea, while adding snacks to everyone's plates. Do you always go with what Kara suggests? Veda asked. Not always. But she's rarely wrong about what will be entertaining, or what foods go with each other. There is no reason to stop her right now. So, just enjoy your tea, and whatever it is that she's put on your plate. The elves wouldn't try to poison us. You're sure of that? The blue dragon seeker asked. Of course. They know what I am, so they know that I'm basically immune to poison unless it kills me instantly, and if it kills me instantly, they're only in more trouble, because I will not be happy. The young elf gave him a confused expression. That doesn't make any sense at all. Veda patted her on the head. It actually does. You see, it is very difficult to permanently kill an avatar of any god, and that goes double for the gods who operate systems. Your world is currently in contact with his guild house, and within range of the dark elven clerics there. If he were killed, they would instantly resurrect him, and then we would all have to deal with the anger of a world dragon avatar who had been betrayed. Trust me, you don't want to see that. The young elf finally understood. They looked like they were alone, but they were not actually alone at all, and he had backup waiting in case things went wrong. But her magical skills were not at the level of a true ranger. She hadn't even started her combat training, as she was only 50 years old, still young for an elf. So, if things got violent, her only option would be to hide somewhere. Alright, let me start somewhere near the beginning so that you have context. The ancestors, those ancient elves that you were meeting with, were once the appointed protectors of a mortal world, assigned by their clan in the immortal realm to ensure the safety and prosperity of the resource and training world. For many years, they served at that position, until time forgot about them. Their clan was destroyed and disbanded after a great war in the immortal realms, and they were left cut off, with their way home closed, and their clan eliminated. So, they continued to guide the world, as they had always done. Such was their life for countless centuries, until one day, a portal to another mortal world opened. The cult of the World Dragon had found them. Endless armies of immortal soldiers, conjured dragons and monsters flowed through the portals as the Darklight host invaders arrived, and were met by the valiant heroes of the resource world. The girl blushed in embarrassment as she realized who she was speaking to. Carl waved one furry hand. "Continue the story. I want to hear it as you've always told it. Otherwise, it won't be right. Don't try to gloss over the good bits just because my guild was on the invading side." The girl nodded. The armies of the Darklight host were born and bred for war, gifted with powers from their god to destroy all who stood against them. The might of the Darklight host was unstoppable. City after city fell, and all who stood against the might of the World Dragon's cult were slaughtered without mercy. Only those who were willing to bend the knee and accept their new overlords were spared. There was no one single starting point of the battle. The Darklight host had arrived on every continent at the same time. But there was one definitive battle that ended it all. In the great forest city of Tuborg, the mighty heroes of the Elven Council stood against the traitors of the forest folk, who sided with the invaders the moment they arrived. United, they wielded the magic of the elves, turning the forest itself against the invaders. All to no avail. Within a day, the defenses had shattered, and the Council of Heroes had only one option left for survival. They activated the legacy left to them by their fallen clan members and separated the ancient city from the world, leaving it floating through the realms aimlessly in their bid to escape the destruction of the Assimilation Army. Chapter 1889. Not what it seems. Carl nodded in understanding as the girl paused. So, this used to be the city of Tuborg, a city hidden in the woods and apparently made from the woods themselves, in the style of the elves. I must say, even after being separated into a pocket dimension for this long, the city really is grand. The servant smiled and nodded. "Thank you. We've done our best to keep it the way that it was intended to be. It's not easy when the space is so limited, as this pocket dimension isn't particularly large for an elven forest, but it's enough to keep the city alive." "So, everyone just does their thing within the city, and the council keeps order?" Carl asked. "Yes, everything is quite structured. There have been some changes made to the original design. Given that there are so few of us pure-blooded elves left after the final battle of Tuborg, the decision was made to dismantle the old caste system and move to a more human system of hereditary employment. Is that the word? Where you take the job that your parents held?" Carl nodded. "It works. Apprenticeship under one's parents, or employment within the same industry that they specialized in, allows the training of children from an early age. Humans are short-lived, and they don't have a century to study and determine what they would like to do with their lives. So, they usually all start out doing what their parents did." "Start out?" Carl nodded. "Of course. Most jobs cannot be done for an entire lifetime. For example, I was born in a mining town on a mortal world, but if you make it past middle-aged, your body starts to slow, old injuries accumulate, and you become better suited to other positions. Those with the most experience are the best to run things, like with your council being the oldest among you. So, even in the immortal realms, humans start out with their family's trade, and then strive to do better for themselves so that their children can start out in the improved situation that they earned later in life." The elf looked stunned by this news. "You're telling me that the job can change?" "Yes. I thought that was obvious. If a senior position passes away, the position naturally goes to the next most capable, while their children start in junior positions within the same field. For example, you serve beverages for the guests of the council and perhaps the council themselves. Normally, that position would come after working in junior positions, either cleaning or working in the staff dining area. Then, when you are more trusted and skilled, you move up to a better position, until you prove that you're the best of the group and have a chance to either lead a department or become the head maid." Every ear in the room was intently tuned to Carl's words, and even Kara could tell that there was something wrong with this situation. "That makes no sense at all. We are all equal. There is no hierarchy. The daughter of a serving slave is a serving slave. The son of a floor sweeper is a floor sweeper." Kara raised her hand to stop the girl before Carl could. "You used the magic word. You said serving slave. Are you property of the council?" The elf nodded. Of course. Everyone in Tuborg is born with an indenture contract to the Grand Council of the Resistance. Kara turned to Carl. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Probably not, but I might be thinking what Ray is thinking. The badger laughed. They couldn't lie in this place, but phrasing things uncertainly was a great way to get around saying what they wanted to say. However, even phrased in a more subtle way, the horror was beginning to dawn on the draconic face of Veda. She now knew why the Darklight host had crushed their world. Their world was a slave farm for an immortal sect, a resource planet not in the sense of food and medicinal herbs, but of the mortals that lived there. Veda was also vaguely aware of the history of the Darklight host and the lore of the world dragon. If they came across a whole planet of slaves, they were almost guaranteed to convert it by force, no matter how well the locals felt they were treated. Do you like your job? Carl asked carefully. Oh, very much, yes. We don't get nearly as many visitors as I would hope, as the council can take care of most of their business remotely and doesn't often entertain visitors. But I greatly enjoy my job. That card is one that I made myself, you know? I am moderately skilled with the natural arts, old elvish magic. I conjured that cart the day that I took over this position for my mother, and I've been improving it ever since. Carl examined the cart, which appeared to be made of some sort of silver metal and polished wood. You conjured silver? It's actually elven steel. And yes, I conjured it myself on my 40th birthday. That's very impressive. A wonderful-looking cart, even if I'm not familiar with the properties of the wood that you've used. He was familiar with elven steel. They had collected a lot of it from a dungeon not long after he had set up the Drod Guild House. But this wood was an entirely new species to him, and he had never seen it before. That is elven cherrywood. It's a wonderful material because it doesn't stain, doesn't rot, and no matter what you spill on it, the wood always smells like cherry blossoms. It makes it perfect for a serving cart, where you're taking away dishes after a meal. That makes perfect sense. If your nose is sensitive to smells, then you really don't want to mingle the smells. The server giggled, while a few behind her were working much harder to hide their amusement. Did I say something odd? Sir, the smell we're usually trying to hide is not that of the food, but of the low-born guests. Palace elves are quite tidy, but many of the outer city's human residents are little better than savages, and the smell can be quite potent. Chapter 1890. Relocation Service. The comment forcibly reminded Carl that they were not working with the same logic that he understood. Apparently, everyone in this city, except for the council members, was considered to be a slave. However, while they claimed that there was no distinction, the elves clearly looked down on the humans. Carl had thought that it was just a matter of social standing, that the people at the edge of the city where it had collided with the guild village were simply poor. But that wasn't really the case. They were the slaves who did the dirtiest of jobs, and the entire city was still treated as livestock, mortal resources for the Council of Elders, and any other immortals still in the pocket dimension. The problem was that some of them were too powerful to be taken lightly, and he hadn't thought to bring in a supreme with him that could take care of the situation. Perhaps it might be best to just let the clans loot this place? The mortals would suffer, but likely not much, as they didn't have anything worth taking. The problems would arise when other clans started trying to take them out to keep them as servants, the way that the new home kept bunnies. Because, while these people were trained for generations, they were not bunnies. They would not work together the same way, or form the happy community. Carl could tell already that this place was fractured, and the people felt little sense of loyalty to each other. That was normal enough for humans, but if you were born with the assigned job your parents held, with no chance of changing it, what was the purpose of building a social circle outside your immediate coworkers? Veda gave Carl a look that told him this whole situation was making her uncomfortable, but Kara was in a grand mood. You know, you have a point. Elves do smell good. Perhaps I should ask the elders if you could be transferred between jobs, Kara suggested. What are you doing? Opal wants elves for her production team. Something about elves being fae. Before Carl could ask her to elaborate, the council members came back in a solemn procession and gave the elf at the table with Carl and Kara a disgusted look. Clearly, she wasn't supposed to be sitting at the table, but Carl waved off their concern. I asked her to join me and provide an entertaining story of the history of this place for the benefit of the Blue Dragon's History Repository. I believe that we have the basics now, and they can check it against the existing recordings once they find records made by the world that you originally came from. Now, have you come to a decision? The ancient elf at the front of the group nodded. In regards to this matter, we believe that it would be best to allow your badger to randomly relocate us. Once we are free of the interference of this immortal world, we should have the power to move the dimension freely. So, you've tried, and the interference is too high for you to break free? The elf said nothing, but in a barrier that allowed only truth, that was an answer all by itself. Kara smiled at the elves. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. But if I can ask a favor? My friend is interested in a couple of method actors for a show that she's developing. Might we purchase the services of a few of your locals? Say, just the 3 that were assigned to this room. The elders waved a dismissive hand. Consider it a payment for your assistance, Badger. I know that your sort doesn't do anything for free. Wonderful. Now, just give me a moment, and I will prepare the transfer. Carl's first thought was, how is Kara even going to do this? But his second thought was, who is helping Kara do this? And that was much more important. Kara snapped her fingers, and a portal opened to the guild house, where Opal was impatiently waiting for her actors. Ladies, if you would, Miss Opal, the forest trickster, will get you all settled into your roles. Don't forget your carts. Those are important props. The ancient elves gave the young servers a pitying look as they left the room, and then Kara turned her attention back to them. Perfect timing. The mana storage is all prepared. I have the core of the pocket dimension, and now we can relocate. The elders looked panicked as Kara held up a small golden sphere. She had clearly been in this room the whole time. How could she have obtained the relic? Now, we cast the ultimate loot-finding spell, and you're off to a new home, Kara declared. Then, she activated Randomize and Teleport at the same time. For a second, it felt like nothing happened, but she had cast it around herself, and as she was holding the core of the pocket dimension, they had all gone with her. All right, we are not stuck in a planet anymore. That's a good start. Carl, look outside and see where we are. Carl laughed as he extended his senses outside. Well, we're not somewhere abandoned, but the space is stable and anchored to a star, so it's unlikely to run into anything else in the near future. There are at least 50 other small dimensions in the region that I can sense, some abandoned, some populated. It seems like as good of a place as any. We are still in the immortal realm, by the way, if anyone was concerned about that. You didn't end up in the chaos plane, or anything too wild. The elders breathed a sigh of relief. Trusting a badger was always a tense moment. Now, they just needed to get the core of their pocket dimension back from her before she started taking them on an adventure around the universe. An unwilling adventure to places they never wanted to see.